Hey there, truth seekers. Have you ever wondered what really went down in the Garden of Eden? I mean, we've all heard the Sunday school version, right? Adam, Eve, an apple, a sneaky serpent, and boom, humanity gets the boot. But hold your horses. What if I told you there's way more to this story than meets the eye? What if the real reason they were kicked out wasn't just about eating forbidden fruit? Buckle up, because today we're diving deep into one of the most mind-blowing mysteries in the Bible. Picture this. A paradise so perfect that every need was met, every desire fulfilled. No bills to pay, no Monday blues, no traffic jams. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But here's the kicker. Adam and Eve threw it all away. Or did they? What if their expulsion was actually part of a master plan that connects directly to Jesus Christ himself? Wild, right? Stick around, because what you're about to discover might just flip everything you thought you knew on its head. Let's set the stage properly. The Garden of Eden wasn't just some fancy botanical garden with nice flowers and cute animals. No way, Jose. This was the ultimate VIP section of creation. We're talking about a place where God himself walked and talked with humanity. Can you imagine that? The creator of the universe just hanging out, having conversations like old friends grabbing coffee. But here's where it gets interesting. In the middle of this paradise stood two special trees. Not just any trees, mind you. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, why would God plant a tree and then tell them not to eat from it? Doesn't that seem a bit like putting a cookie jar in front of a kid and saying, "Don't touch"? What do you think? Does that sound like a setup to you? Hold that thought, because there's something deeper going on here. See, God gave Adam and Eve one simple rule. Just one. Out of an entire garden full of delicious fruit, there was only one tree that was off limits. That's a pretty sweet deal if you ask me. But here's the million-dollar question. Why that specific tree? Now let's talk about what actually happened. The serpent, and we all know who's pulling the strings there, shows up with the smoothest sales pitch in history. He doesn't just say, "Hey, eat this fruit." Nope. He goes straight for the psychological warfare. Did God really say you can't eat from any tree? He asks, twisting the truth right from the get-go. But here's the real zinger. You won't die. God knows that when you eat it, you'll become like him, knowing good and evil. Boom. There it is. The serpent wasn't selling fruit. He was selling the idea that they could be gods themselves, that they didn't need God because they could have his wisdom, his power, his position. Talk about the original identity theft. Am I right? And here's something that'll make you scratch your head. Eve saw that the fruit was desirable for gaining wisdom. It wasn't about being hungry or the fruit looking tasty. It was about the desire to be equal with God. That's a whole different ballgame. So they ate the fruit. And then what? Did they drop dead on the spot? Nope. But something else happened. Something arguably worse. Their eyes were opened, all right, but not in the way they expected. The first thing they noticed? They were naked. And suddenly, for the first time ever, they felt shame. Isn't that wild? They'd been walking around in their birthday suits the whole time, and it never bothered them before. But now they're scrambling to make clothes out of fig leaves. Talk about a fashion emergency. But the real heartbreak comes next. When they hear God walking in the garden, what do? They hide. Let that sink in for a moment. They hide from the one who created them, who loved them, who gave them everything. The relationship was broken. The trust was shattered. The perfect fellowship? Gone in an instant. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many times do we hide from God when we mess up? All right, here's where we get to the juicy part. The real reason they got kicked out. And no, it's not just because they disobeyed. There's something way more profound going on here, and most people completely miss it. Listen to what God says in Genesis 3:22. The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Wait, what? Read that again. God wasn't just punishing them for eating the forbidden fruit. He was preventing them from eating from the tree of life. Because if they ate from that tree in their fallen state, they would live forever, separated from God, trapped in sin and shame for all eternity. Can you imagine the horror of that? Living forever, but without the possibility of redemption. That's not paradise. That's a nightmare. So here's the plot twist. The expulsion from Eden wasn't just punishment. It was actually an act of mercy. God was protecting them from a fate worse than physical death. He was keeping the door open for restoration, He was making room for a rescue plan. Doesn't that give you chills? Now, before God kicks them out, he does something absolutely incredible. He speaks directly to the serpent, and hidden in what sounds like a curse is actually the very first prophecy about Jesus Christ. Check this out. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. At first glance, you might think, okay, so snakes and humans won't get along. Got it. But that's not what this is about at all. This is what scholars call the proto-evangelium, the first announcement of the gospel. The offspring of the woman? That's Jesus, born of a woman, born to crush the serpent's head, to defeat Satan once and for all. Sure, Satan would strike his heel, a reference to the crucifixion, but that wouldn't be the end of the story. Not even close. Right there, in the moment of humanity's greatest failure, God announces his rescue plan. How's that for turning the tables? Here's something that'll blow your mind. There are two gardens in the Bible that mirror each other perfectly. The Garden of Eden, where sin entered the world, and the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus faced the ultimate test before conquering sin. In Eden, Adam chose to disobey and brought death into the world. In Gethsemane, Jesus, called the last Adam, chose to obey and brought life. Adam hid from God among the trees. Jesus sweat drops of blood while praying among the trees. Adam's choice led to exile from paradise. Jesus' choice led to the way back to paradise. See the pattern? It's like the whole Bible is one continuous story, and Eden isn't the end. It's the beginning of God's rescue mission. Let's talk about trees for a minute, because they play a huge role in this whole story. In Eden, there was the tree of knowledge that brought death. At Calvary, there was a tree, the cross, that brought life. Think about it. The first tree represented humanity's attempt to become like God without God. The second tree represented God becoming like humanity to save humanity. The first tree's fruit brought shame and hiding. The second tree's sacrifice brought honor and acceptance. Paul writes in Galatians that Jesus became a curse for us by hanging on a tree so that we could receive the blessing. He took the curse that Adam's choice brought on us and nailed it to the cross. How's that for a comeback story? After the expulsion, God placed cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Now, most people read that and think, yep, we're locked out for good. Game over. But wait, is that really the end? Think about the symbolism here. Throughout the Bible, cherubim represent God's presence. And fire? Fire represents both judgment and purification. What if those guards weren't just keeping people out, but were actually marking the path that needed to be cleared? And guess who cleared that path? Jesus. When he died on the cross, the veil in the temple, which was embroidered with cherubim, was torn from top to bottom. The way to God's presence was opened again. The flaming sword of judgment fell on him instead of us. Suddenly, those guards at Eden's gate look less like a permanent barrier and more like a sign pointing to the solution that was coming. Here's where everything comes full circle. Adam and Eve were expelled from paradise, unable to return on their own. But Jesus, through his life, death, and resurrection, didn't just open the way back to Eden. He offered something even better. Remember what Jesus told the thief on the cross? Today you will be with me in paradise. Not someday, not eventually. Today, right there, in the moment of apparent defeat, Jesus was already handing out tickets back to paradise. And in Revelation, what do we see? A vision of a new heaven and a new earth, where the tree of life appears again. But this time, there's no cherubim guarding it, no flaming sword blocking access. Instead, its leaves are for the healing of the nations, and God's people will eat from it freely. The exile from Eden wasn't the end of the story. It was chapter 1 of the greatest comeback in history. So, what's the takeaway from all this? Why does it matter that Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden for reasons deeper than just eating forbidden fruit? Because it shows us that God's plan was never just about punishment. It was always about redemption. The expulsion wasn't a door slamming shut. It was God making room for the greatest rescue mission ever conceived. Every time we mess up, every time we hide from God in shame, every time we feel like we've gone too far, we can remember that God didn't give up on humanity in the garden, and he won't give up on us now. The same God who promised a rescuer to Adam and Eve is the God who sent Jesus. The same God who prevented eternal separation in Eden is the God who offers eternal life through Christ. What do you think about that? Doesn't it change the whole way you see the story? So here's the bottom line, folks. Adam and Eve weren't just kicked out for eating fruit. They were mercifully prevented from eating from the tree of life in their fallen state, which would have locked them in eternal separation from God. But even in that moment, God was already setting up his master plan. The expulsion from Eden and Jesus' sacrifice are two parts of the same story. One shows us the problem, humanity's separation from God. The other shows us the solution, God's relentless pursuit to bring us back home. The hidden connection? It's not really hidden at all once you see it. The whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, is the story of God kicking down every door, clearing every obstacle, and paying every price to get his children back. And that, my friends, is the true reason behind the expulsion from Eden. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the greatest love story ever told. So next time you read about Adam and Eve getting kicked out of paradise, don't just see punishment. See mercy. See hope. See a God who loved us too much to let us stay in our broken state, and who loved us enough to make a way back, no matter what it cost him. What's your take on this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this opened your eyes to something new, make sure to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep seeking the truth, because the truth really does set you free.